but been 16 years that I've been working with MedTech companies. Was in the US for 8 years, where I did my master's in biomedical engineering, was with Philips, where I was actually a design engineer, not a QARA to begin with. Came back to India with a vision to start something of my own. Joined a startup, a well-known startup in Bangalore called Force Health. That's where actually my journey in the whole regulatory forum and then QMS started. And since then, I have been working with many startups, helping them on their regulatory strategies and QMS implementation. And as of June 23 is when I started my company. The company is called easyQ Solutions, and then basically what we are trying to do over there is primarily use technology to overcome the challenges of compliances that were shared even with my that was even spoken about by my fellow colleagues as well, right? Very often people come to me and they make one statement saying that my product is CE certified, FDA approved. I'm going to start selling in India, right? That's not true, right? What I wanted to present over here in this slide is basically to tell you guys that every country is unique. They have their own regulatory requirements, and whenever you target a specific country, you need to be aware of their regulatory requirements and then go about it, right? Even today, in fact, even as of yesterday, right, I was talking to someone, and in that discussion, they actually made a statement saying that, oh, my product is CE IVDR, and we are planning to launch in India. And I said, okay, you're planning to launch in India, great, but do you have your CDSCO approval? And they were like, oh, but we have CE IVDR. And I'm like, yeah, you have CE IVDR, fantastic, congratulations. Please keep selling in the European region, but if you want to sell in India, you need to get your CDSCO approved, your manufacturing or import license, right? So very important for you guys to be firstly aware that the statement or the notion that if you have a regulatory approval from any of the mature markets like Europe or US or UK, that doesn't always necessarily mean an easy or a straightforward entry into other regions, right? You need to understand specific countries' regulatory requirements, meet those requirements, show conformances, and only then, once you get your approval, you will be able to get into the market, right? So if there are any such notions, any such assumptions, please break those assumptions and start understanding your key markets. Last hour or so, we have been, listening from Dr. Sudhakar, from Dr. Sonia about a lot of things with respect to risk-based approach, safety, and a lot of other things, right? For any product to be successfully launched, for any product to get, their regulatory, to make their regulatory life easy, right? The most important thing that I have learned is nothing but defining the product, right? What you call as your indications of use or intended use. It's so common that I see that companies actually do not frame their intended use, right? Or they have some predefined notion or some wrong assumptions about their indications of intended use, and that leads to a lot of problem as they move forward, right? This statement about your product is legally tied to your product and to your company as well, right? It is so often that people see problems that can scale up to recalls, legal issues, is because they have messed up with their intent use, or they have messed up their marketing, which is not in line with intent use, or their websites, which are again not in line with the intent use, or their clinical studies, which are again not in line with the intent use, right? Everything happens after this, right? Very, very, very important for you guys to understand, especially the guys who are into research, starting their own companies, working into their startups, whatever they might be doing, to make sure that they understand the intent use, right? Also, very often people come to me and say, my device is not invasive, it is not doing anything, it is just an aid to the doctor, we are class A. You don't define like that, right? Even if you're not doing direct diagnosis, you are aiding a doctor. What happens if your aid is not correct? What happens if one of, out of the 5 data points that a doctor is supposed to take, one is your data point? You're creating a 20% chance of biasing in a wrong way, right? So please don't be having those mindset that, just because you're non-invasive or, it doesn't come in contact with the body or things like that, you might be a class. You cannot define that. It's your intent use. It's basically on paper what you claim is going to eventually define your regulatory classification as well, right? And everything will start after that, right? Whether you are a class A in India or a class D in India, whether you're class 1 in Europe or class 3 in Europe, or whether you're class 1 or class 3 in US FDA, will define later what your regulatory pathway is going to be. That is going to define basically your strategy, cost, timeline, everything depends on that, right? So please make sure that, your intent use are properly defined. You understand what you're claiming, right? And then, based on that, take your strategies forward, right? We spoke about QMS, ISO 13485. What is QMS? What is ISO 13485? Anybody? processes, input, output, set of documents, right? These are the standard things that you can think about ISO 13485. No, ISO 13485 is basically your company's culture, right? It is going to tell me what your company is all about. It is going to tell me how your company operates. It is going to tell me if you are truly a process-driven company or you are a people-driven company, right? Dr. Sonia, I think you mentioned that there are so many companies which are bogus and things that absolutely true. There are companies which come to you and charge 10,000 rupees and give you some certificate without you having a single process implemented, right? Avoid all of that. ISO 13485 is going to be the backbone of your organization. It is going to be the backbone of your regulatory approvals as well, right? The byproduct of a good quality management system is efficient regulatory approvals, right? Also, your ISO 13485, your regulatory approvals is not a one-time activity. Companies come to me, they say, yeah, we have certificate ISO 13485 done, party, let's move forward, right? It's not a one-time thing, right? It's a continuous thing, right? Agencies are going to come to your offices. They're going to do audits. They're going to see if you guys are following your processes, right? So it's going to be building a culture within your organization. So for me, if anybody asks me what is ISO 13485, it is nothing but the culture of your organization. Stronger the culture, better for you. Stronger the culture, better your regulatory outputs will be, right? You'll be much more efficient, right? So yes, while ISO 13485 is all about how you define your processes in theory, you need to have set of processes, implement evidence, audits, non-conformance, kappa, blah blah blah, right? But I think it's way beyond that, right? So please make sure that from day one, right, you are aware of your QMS, you are at least working towards it. If not formally, you yourself within a small team are at least documenting the key aspects so that tomorrow when you have the funds, when you have the bandwidth, when you have the the right team with you to start implementing, it shouldn't be where you are starting at zero, where your development is already at a much more mature stage, right? So keep thinking about this, right? Ensure that it is part of your strategy from day one. CDSCO, again, I was listening to my fellow speakers, they were talking about CDSCO. Dr. Sudhakar shared his thoughts, Sonia shared her thoughts, right? If you ask me, right, CDSCO, since I came back to India, I came back in 2014, right? And I think in 2014, CDSCO was regulating not more than 7 or 9 devices, right? Some of them were contraceptive and stents and implants and things like that, right? Since then, we are in 2025. I have personally seen and I have personally interacted. I have been, I have even been the person who has written letter to CDSCO, emails to CDSCO, has done, on ground application and things like that, right? And I have actually seen the way CDSCO has matured over time and the direction in which they are going, right? And it is amazing to even say that CDSCO was, in fact, the first, even before FDA started their online review system, CDSCO had implemented that, right? We have an online review system, the Sugam portal that was referred to, right? As I think it's been active since past 2-3 years, right? In fact, more than that, right? Where initially we were doing this NOC business, right? And now we are doing the application for test license to even manufacturing license, import for test license, all other things, all other different things, right? So I think CDSCO is doing pretty good, right? Yeah, there are a few places where not only CDSCO, I think everybody needs to improve upon, right? One such thing I can share with you guys is the way the whole classification works in CDSCO. There are predefined classification, devices are predefined by CDSCO, but what happens if your device is not part of one of those lists, right? Or it's not there in the list, right? You fall back at MDR 2017, look into the rules, and then you try to classify your device, your system, right? But nevertheless, yeah, it's important for you guys to be aware that CDSCO is India's regulatory body, not DGCI, not ICMR. It's CDSCO which gives you the final approval, right? And you should be interacting with CDSCO to get all your medical device side of doubts cleared, right? The rule, the document, the Bible that we need to look into, right? When we talk about India is MDR 2017. I think it's very well written document, very well crafted document. Yes, there are languages which which might not be straightforward, but trust me, if you think MDR 2017 is difficult, have a look at EU MDR 2017-745, EU MDR 2017-746, right? And then you will come back and realize that our MDR 2017 is much better, right? It's a 200-page document. The entire language is more like a legal language, right? You actually don't get any black and white out of it, right? Except for a few things here and there. Compared to that, I think the way MDR 2017 is written is you can decode it better, right? So please be aware, right? You don't have to necessarily mug the MDR 2017. Trust me, I have read it 4 to 5 times and I still don't remember it and I keep forgetting things, right? But at least you should be aware of where to go and look for answers, right? And MDR 2017 is that source for you, right? Follows a four-tier system: class A, B, C, D, right? Typically class A is devices which are low risk, D are devices which are high risk. Again, who defines that? You define that based on the intended use that you have you have defined for your product, right? So it is not by will or by ad hoc measures that I'll say, oh, I think I should be class A because it will save me money. No, that's not how you should go about it. It's all driven through your intended use indications for use. And if your intended use indication of use changes, you need to reassess whether your classification remains the same or it modifies or it changes, right? So be careful. Again, it ties back to your intended use that I was talking about. Ensure that your intent use is clear. You are aware of how it is, what it is, right? Registration done by online portal. You apply for manufacturing license if you want to if you want to commercially launch your product. But before that, you need to have your test license. You apply for your import license if you're a company not in India, and import for test license if you want to import a device in India and get it tested, right? So these are the few basics from CDSCO's perspective that you want to really be aware of and make sure that you have your grip over the same. Many times even people come to me and when they talk, there's one question that I keep getting very frequently is that CDSCO के लिए approach क्या होना चाहिए, CE के लिए approach क्या होना चाहिए, right? Can I bypass certain test which I might need for CE but not for CDSCO? That is not the right thought process. You're telling me that you're going to put a device which is not safe in India, but you want to put a device which is safer in Europe, right? Makes no sense. So from a safety perspective, from an efficacy perspective, the rigor, the amount of work that you need to do for getting a CE marking or getting a FDA approval is the same that you should be doing it for CDSCO as well, right? So, but still many times people come and say, yeah, we are going to do this testing. It is on the way, but we want to apply for manufacturing license. And I'm like, how will you apply for manufacturing license when you don't even have your safety data with you, right? So all your EMI/EMC data, your safety data, your 60601 testing, your IEC testing, your biocompatibility testing, right? All of that should be in place before you apply for your manufacturing license. Not only that, nowadays even your cybersecurity, we'll be talking about that as well, should also be in place before you go and apply for your manufacturing license, right? Even the reviewers are becoming smarter day by day. They are also understanding what is happening, right? Even the auditors who come to audit your facility are understanding the technology, are trying to learn new technology, and they are coming, and when they do the audits, it's no more the traditional manufacturing site audit. They are actually looking at every aspect of your product, including software, including AI, if it is part of your product, right? Before we go into and then discuss about the European side of things, Dr. Sonia was talking about starting earlier, and she mentioned about device testing and how critical it is to include device testing as early as possible. I can share one personal experience. So I was working with this company which had developed an active device which could basically measure 7 different parameters, right? ECG, SpO2, BP, blood glucose, cholesterol, uric acid, hemoglobin, right? And the device was getting a lot of good traction. We did some studies, went very well, all of that sorted, right? We even tried to put some of this is I think almost 5-6 years ago, before the whole MDR 2017 came into the picture. We even put some device into the market. We got really good traction. Things were going really well. And then, the discussion started about the CE marking side of things, right? That hey, we need to have a CE marking. So for CE marking, they had their regulations. We had to do our safety testing, EMI, EMC, and all of that. No exaggeration, but when we went for our safety testing and all, we failed all the tests. And the mitigation to that for us to get the CE marking, which was a mandate now because the investors were looking at us, even the potential bigger distributors and all were also mandating CE certificate before they could place a big order. So it became a absolute mandate for us to go through it. And the mitigation for that, when we failed all the tests, was we had to redesign the whole career board. We had to redesign our entire PCB, and it increased our BOM cost by almost $150, right? And then we had to do the whole thing again, right? Don't forget about the multiple iteration that we had to go about doing the testing, paying the labs the cost, wasting that much amount of time, right? So our entire efficiency that we had built had gone for a toss, and literally we came up with a new product just because we never considered, or we never thought of considering early testing as we were getting tractions in India, right? But that's the kind of impact that happens very frequently, right? I've also seen cases where devices are called off the market, or they are not able to progress with a specific type of device just because they are not able to meet these requirements, right? ECG is one such device which has very stringent requirements, right? BP has clinical trials requirement. SpO2 has very stringent clinical study requirements as well, right? The sample size is low, but it is actually a pretty stringent requirement from the perspective of actually implementing them, right? So while these devices are you might see them very commonly, but when you think from a regulatory perspective, right, the whole requirement, the whole mindset, the way thing needs to be approached changes, right? And hence it is more important for you to inculcate regulatory as part of your overall strategy, right? So regulatory should not be seen in isolation. That's the biggest problem, right? That's the biggest problem I see even with MNCs, right? That while they do a very good job in planning and strategizing and all that, but end of the day, regulatory is still an isolated vertical. QMS is an isolated vertical, which should not be the case, right? Your regulatory strategy should be closely tied with your product strategies. And if you do that, again, you will build efficiency in whatever you do within your organization, right? MDR 2017-745 is the regulation for general medical devices if you want to get your CE marking. IVDR 2017-746 is the regulation for in vitro diagnostic devices, right? Unlike Europe, in India, both for in vitro diagnostic devices and general medical devices are under the same rule, which is MDR 2017, Medical Device Rules 2017, right? Many people come and they say IMDR and then some other name they give, but it's basically MDR 2017, which is basically Medical Device Rule 2017 for India, right? MDR 2017-745 is a 200-page document, and 746 is also a 200-page document. A lot of things goes, within those documents, but again, I'll try to summarize for you guys. It's the classification varies. The way medical devices are classified in Europe versus the way medical devices are in vitro diagnostic devices are classified is different, right? Medical devices follow 1, 2A, 2B, 3 tier system, wherein in vitro diagnostic devices they follow ABCD, right? So it's a 4-tier system, but different ways of classifying. They follow more of a rule-based approach, right? Where you need to read the rules, you need to see which is the rule which closely aligns to your intended use, right? And on the basis of that, you get to know whether your product is classified as 1, 2A, 2B, 3 or ABCD, right? And then based on that, you follow the process, right? ROHS becomes a very important requirement over here. Again, pointing towards Dr. Sonia, she was talking about regulatory at the point of selecting your components, and she was trying to give you some insights, right? It actually starts from there. So when you look into your component level assessment, and how does component level assessment help you in your regulatory compliances? ROHS. Take an example of ROHS. If all your components in your BOM are ROHS certified, then basically you are meeting the requirement of ROHS, right? One easy or straightforward way of claiming ROHS compliance if you want to go towards European side of things, right? Your batteries. If your batteries are IC certified, right, then again it's a easier way for you to claim compliance and crack your safety testing, right? So similarly, if you keep an eye off right from your component level, right from your design side of things, right, then again you are making your regulatory strategies much more efficient, right? Especially when you implement them. One of the primary difference, right, or one of the most important aspect when you talk about CE marking, right, versus USFDA versus even CDSCO, right? Or if you come and ask me, Varun, how did CE evolve was when they were MDD versus now that they are MDR, what changed significantly? If that is the question, right, then one thing I would like to highlight is the one thing that changed significantly is their emphasis on clinical data, right? They want to see more and more clinical data, right? They want to ensure that your clinical evaluation reports have enough clinical data, or you have done enough research, or if there are similar devices in the market, you have gained enough data from existing devices also in the market, and you are evaluating those in the right way, right? So the whole emphasis on clinical data, and when I use the word clinical data, I'm not talking about you creating your own clinical study and creating your own data. Not just that, I'm actually talking about in general clinical data with respect to your device or your type of device, right? So it can be your own data through the clinical studies that you are doing, or it can be your competitors' data or predicates data that you are looking at, right? So that emphasis has gone very high, right? And they keep asking a lot of questions. In fact, one of the biggest reason why companies fail their CE process, right, is because they are not presenting their clinical data properly, or they are not presenting their clinical data adequately, right? So CERs get rejected, or they get a lot of questions on that. They're not able to answer it. They're not able to give right data, and that's where that to and fro after 3 times. So you only have 3 times to do the to and fro. If you're not able to crack by then, basically you see a rejection, right? So that's where CE has gone very strict, right? Apart from few other things that they look into, but the clinical data aspect has been something that they have drastically improved upon from where they are versus where they are now. When you ask the question stringentness, right? With respect to what, right? Are you talking about with respect to review of documents? So if you say, let's say, with respect to the review of the submission, review of the dossier, right? If that's what the question is, right? Then I would say CE has improved drastically. FDA was always the benchmark, right? Because keep this in mind, sir, that the person who's reviewing your file in the FDA, right? Let's say is a PhD or a master's holder in that topic. So you can understand the kind of interaction that you're going to have with that kind of person, right? And there is not a one-person review panel, right? When even you go for your pre-submissions with the FDA, right? I have been in pre-submission with the FDA where I was with 3 people and the FDA had a team of 7 people, because one guy was an expert of cybersecurity, one guy was an expert of AI, one guy was an expert of the clinical claims that we were claiming, and 3 other were expert of human factors or whatever we had questions on, right? So that's the kind of involvement that they have. That's the kind of support that they have within their department, right? When you look at the European side of things, right, they have improved drastically, right? Their reviewers have also gone up a notch better compared to what it was, I would say, before MDR, right? So even they are asking a lot of questions. Very frequently, I have seen some of my submission where I have been questioned with a list of 30-40 questions, right? And all of those were legit good questions with respect to sample size, with respect to claims, with respect to discrepancies in documents, right? The way we were talking, the way we were presenting data. So all of those made a lot of sense, right? So the review quality of the European side of things have drastically improved, right? So what I would say is that when you are going for your C submission, the way it was before versus way it is now, it's huge difference, and you have to be prepared a notch better than what you would have assumed of C submission before, right? Another thing is when you talk about timelines, right? What has happened is there are only so many notified bodies in the world, and this is also very important for you guys to understand, right? Again, I'm going to point to Dr. Sonia on what she mentioned about these agencies which promise you things and things like that, right? There are only X number of companies in the world which are approved by the European Union, which can give you your CE certificate either under MDR or IVDR. The number of companies globally for IVDR is, I think, not even 20. Okay, globally. So you can imagine, right? And the number of companies globally for MDR is, I would say, around 30, 40, right? Still not a huge number. Before it was 100, 150, right? So now you can understand that these companies are already burdened with so much of work. So the existing products have to go from MDD to MDR transition. The new products are coming in. The whole healthcare industry is booming and coming up with new products and companies into the market, right? So the onus is on these 20, 30, 40 companies to give you the CE certificate. Now, naturally, the overall time to complete the whole process has gone very high, and the cost also has gone very high. So getting a CE certificate now is costly also and time consuming also. So with that thing in mind, many companies prefer to go towards FDA submission and maybe get an approval with FDA compared to getting it faster with respect to CE. That's a different thing altogether. But when you talk about review process, this is how the difference is. Right from you selecting your authorized representative to the person who's going to help you in your technical file, writing of your technical file, GSPRs becomes very important, right? Even if your authorized representative is not good, and this happened with me, 2 different authorized representative, similar kind of product, 2 different companies. One selected an authorized representative which was expensive but a global name. Second selected an authorized representative which was cheaper, someone who's working on its own from Germany. Okay, Same product, same everything. I was the one who was working for both the companies, helping them out, right? One company got their approval within like 45 days, other took almost 4 months, right? So even the authorized representative that you are working with plays a very important role in building the credibility of the file that you are submitting, right? Or the review that you are doing, right? And that is also something, you should keep in mind. So all of these aspects in the whole process of your, getting your regulatory approvals are very important for you to keep in mind, right? You don't have to be too, you don't have to get too bogged down with this, but just be aware, right? At least do your basic due diligence before you appoint your authorized representative, or before you appoint your, your consultants also that you're going to work with. They do have fair understanding of the whole process. The thing about US FDA, right, that I really like a lot, right, personally, is the fact that they interact a lot with you, right? So they have programs of doing pre-subs. They have a lot of webinars. They have public forums where you can interact with them. Even if you missed out a webinar, I mean, there are webinars in public forum. You can do a pre-sub, right? Write it to them, give them your product details. In 60 to 90 days, they will tell you in a written feedback exactly telling you what you should do, what you should not do, answering your questions, and then you also get a chance to talk to them and get more insight, right? I think that's one thing that if I could advise CDSCO, I would tell them that, see, if we can start this kind of program in India as well, helps companies a lot, right? Help them to clear their doubt, get them on track from day one, and you're directly, it's kind of a thing that where you're directly listening from the horse's mouth, so you don't have to have too much of confusion, right? Ye consultant ne wo bola, usne ye bola. You can avoid all that nonsense, right? So that's one really good thing that I like about FDA. FDA, the way they work is slightly different. They don't work on a, so again, everything starts from internet use, right? Everything starts from internet use, right? So they don't work with this concept where you need to look into rules and stuff, right? They have devices that they have identified. They have pre-classified devices. You look into your device. If your device has a predicate, the definition of predicate is basically any approved device which is similar to my device and approved by that country's regulatory body, and it's available in the market, is my predicate, right? So if I'm an ECG manufacturer, if there is an ECG in US which is approved and my claim and their claim are similar, then that becomes my predicate. If I want to sell in US and an ECG manufacturer has got an approval in India, they cannot be my predicate for the US application, right? Simple as that, right? And substantial equivalence is basically when you say that, hey, this is my predicate, and whatever I am doing is similar to the predicate, right? From the testing, right? From the safety aspect, right? From the clinical studies, right? From biocompatibility, whatever is applicable to you, right? From your claims, whatever is applicable to you is similar, not same, to my predicate is substantial equivalence. Again, substantial equivalence does not mean that you need to be exactly same as your predicate. Even if there are differences, you need to highlight those differences to the FDA. You need to explain the FDA that, see, FDA, this is the difference, but it is still not significantly different because my intent use is the same, my overall technology or the output is the same, the way I am doing things is similar, right? And even if there is minor difference in let's say he's using Bluetooth versus I'm not using Bluetooth, or he's using battery versus I'm not using battery, or he's using one type of a software, I'm using a different type of a software, you explain that difference, you explain how the difference has been verified, validated, and you have ensured that it does not have any additional safety concern. You do that and you move forward, right? So there is again a notion where people are replacing the word similar with same, right? Please don't do that, right? You can absolutely have differences. You will have differences in your product. Yeah, I mean, how can you make two same product? I mean, you'll have all sort of legal issues. No, after that, you will definitely have differences in your product, right? The intention of claiming someone to be predicate is not to say I am same as that person or I am same as that product, right? To say that I am similar with respect to certain aspect, you prove that, move forward, right? And that's where FDA becomes different in the way they do their whole regulatory approvals and stuff like that. Is that they look into the concept of predicates. If there is no predicate, what happens? If there is no predicate, then you can claim yourself to be the first of the kind, right? Or de novo, right? Again, a very straightforward, well-documented process. Again, the onus is again on you to submit all the right data, right? From safety and efficacy. It's not just safety, right? You can't just say that my device is safe, but it gives all sorts of, false positive and false negative, and my efficacy is very low, right? Even that is something that FDA or any regulatory body will have objections and they will not give you approvals, right? So both safety and efficacy becomes very important for you to ensure that, you are meeting you are ensuring this device is safe and it is also doing what you intended to do, right? Similar to ISO 13485, now FDA is talking about harmonizing 13485 with what they call as 21 CFR Part 820, which is FDA's equivalent to ISO 13485. They're trying to harmonize it and then kind of have a single, or rather accept ISO 13485 as well, which was not the case before. So similar to ISO 13485, FDA has its own quality management system, which they call it as QSR, Quality System Regulation, which is 21 CFR Part 820, right? And then there are similar other parts, 803, 801, which will be applicable to you, based on what product you are making. Apart from the ISO and IEC standards, you should also be mindful of all the guidances that European guys have also followed or developed, which is called MDCGs, right? And the FDA has also developed, right? FDA has bunch of guidance document. They have guidance document on software. They have guidance document on AI. They have guidance document on human factors. They have guidance document even on if you have developed a blood glucose monitoring system for, let's say, self-use versus for, let's say, hospital care. They have two different guidance documents for both the application, right? And the actual clinical study that you do for both for two different kind of application is also different. So it's the onus is on you to find the right guidance document for you. It's all there. You need to be aware of what your product is. You need to do your research. You need to ensure that you have your regulatory strategy, ironed out and then implement accordingly, right? If you know, right, how to go about it, I can tell you it's not that difficult, right? It is only things become difficult is because either you don't know or you don't know where to look for. अगर मेरे को पता ही नहीं है करना क्या है, then it becomes very difficult. और मुझे अगर ये भी नहीं पता कि जाके देखूं कहाँ पे, then also it becomes very difficult. So if you don't know, and even if you don't know where to look for, both these things will make your life difficult, right? And that's where I see a lot of issues with respect to regulatory side of things, because people they typically talk to other people and they get confused because one person will say something else, other will say something else, and they are like, oh, where do I even go and start from, right? So to avoid those things, if you know your product, you do your research right, you look at the right places, your strategies can be ironed out pretty well. One more thing that I would like to highlight is many times, people come to me and they say, oh, my product is ISO 13485 certified. Your products are never ISO 13485 certified. It is your company. It is company XYZ, company easyQ Solutions, which will get their ISO 13485 certified. And it is the product which undergo regulatory approval. So every product that your company might have manufactured will have its own regulatory approval. If you have 10 products, all 10 products will have to have their own regulatory approval. And all 10 products might have their different classification, right? One might be A, B, C, D, whatever it might be, right? So please keep that also in mind, right? You never say that my product is ISO 13485 certified. It is your company, right? And once your company is ISO 13485 certified, as I said, it's your culture now, right? So you need to ensure that everything that comes out of that company is following the right process that it needs to follow, document, do everything that you need to do, build the DHFs, build the DMR, build the DHRs where applicable, and ensure that you are maintaining those, within your organization, right? One more thing, just because my product is class A in Europe, it doesn't mean that it's going to be class 1 in the US. I'll give you an example. Whole slide imaging system in the world of digital pathology, right, is class A in Europe. For me to get approval for a whole slide imaging system in Europe is like very simple. It's class A process is very simple. Guess what? The same whole slide imaging system in the US is class 2. Not only that, with special controls. What does that mean? The kind of clinical study that you have to do for a whole slide imaging system, the kind of in-house testing that you need to do for a whole slide imaging system is rigorous, right? You need to do inter-pathologist variation study. You need to do inter-site study. You need to do intra-system studies and clinical studies, right? That too, minimum 1200 cases, right? So please don't be in this notion that, oh, you know what, mera device India mein class A, so life is sorted, right? No. Every country, as I started from my first slide, every country has its own regulations. Every country has its own way of looking at things. You need to understand that. You need to ensure that. You need to develop a regulatory plan against that, and then you need to execute, right? So please do not assume things, right? Ensure that you verify, ensure that you document it, and then you implement it. One thing that I want to highlight in this discussion is over the last 1 year that I have seen a lot of discussion happening is something called breakthrough designation, right? We are talking about novel technologies. We are talking about novel healthcare. If you believe you are doing something, which is unique, which nobody has done, please apply for breakthrough designation, right? This is something that FDA officially grants you a designation called breakthrough designation. helps you in your development, helps you in your overall approval process. This does not mean that you have got an approval to sell, right? Please keep that in mind. This just gives you a formal designation that what you're doing is indeed novel, and based on that, FDA will support you. This is again with only with FDA. No other country has this kind of a program. Only with FDA, and you can leverage it to build your credibility, your product's credibility, your company's credibility, all of that, and then it also helps you in your overall approval as well, right? Last 2 3 slides, way forward. So what's happening, right? We are almost entering in a world pretty much that everything and anything you want to do, AI is going to be part of it, right? So when AI becomes part of of our life in such a in such a close manner, right? A lot of work happening at the AI side of things, right? And when you talk about AI, the one thing that automatically comes into the picture is cybersecurity, right? Please ensure that if you are a company which is dealing with software, if you are a company which is dealing with processing data, if you're a company which is dealing with AI or using data, right, for your AI, you have good cybersecurity framework in place, right? 27001 is a good place to start with, but it is not the only way, right? Your testing protocols, your documentation, your processes, both FDA and CE, MDCG has very good guidelines on how to go about your cybersecurity, how the process should be defined, what kind of documentation you need to maintain, what kind of testing you need to do. Please have a look at that, right? When you talk about AI predominantly talks about how you deal with data. Your data becomes the key. You're using that data. Traceability of that data becomes very important, right? If I have to highlight something from an AI side of things, right? How are you ensuring the data sets that you're using, the training and testing data set for developing the model? How do you ensure the traceability of all of that, right? So please ensure, you have those within your organization. You have developed the process around it, you have control around it, right? So AI and cybersecurity, day by day, I see new standards coming in, new guidance is coming in, right? Recently, the FDA launched a guidance for AI practices and documentation you need to submit if your product is an AI product. Have a look at that as well. Finally, few things for startups. Start early. I think every one of us has been telling this from since morning day one. Start early, start early, start early. I think I personally have lived that. Right. I've seen situations where we did not start early, and what all we had to do, when we reached a certain stage, right? So you'll be more efficient. You'll save a lot of money and time if you start early, right? Have some predefined goals. Try to tell yourself that okay, 21 CFR pari 213485, कुछ तो दिमाग में रखे, start building your documentation, right? Don't be blank, right? It's okay for you to not even apply for certification if you don't have the funds, right? But at least within your organization, start having that culture, right? Define your quality and regulatory strategies properly. Keep another thing in mind that QMS and regulatory is not, there is like no single way in which you can get it done, right? I can build a QMS system which can have hundreds of documents, hundreds of processes. I can build a QMS system for the same company with limited number of documents and practices and processes, right? So don't jump around. Stick to your strategy. Stick to your guide. Whoever is guiding you, mentoring you, consulting you, right? Stick with them. Look into their strategy, understand their strategy, see what strategy best suits you. There are 10 different ways in which you can get your approvals. There are 10 different ways in which you can get your company ISO certified. As far as you're doing it the right way with the right people, you should be good to go, right? So don't overthink your QMS and regulatory strategy, but then don't underthink also, right? Try to be balanced, right? Companies which try to overthink, they tend to do a lot of more things, and that also causes a lot of issue from commercialization perspective. And the ones which are not at all thinking are also creating a lot of issues for themselves, right? So try to balance it out. As I said, it should be part of your strategy, your company strategy, your product strategy, and if you can do that, you will be much more efficient in your outputs, right? With this, I would like to conclude. Thank you so much.
To stay informed about the startup ecosystem, subscribe to my Startup TV.